Hello everyone, I've had a day of hedge cutting. It's cold, it's dark, there's nothing on the telly, so I'm getting my fix of looking through some tractor brochures. Do you fancy having a look with me? Brilliant. So over the years I have gathered loads of tractors and agriculture machinery brochures. I used to go to shows like the Royal Welsh and come home weighed heavy with brochures of various tractors and the like. However, in more recent times I've had a look for the older David Brown brochures and the like, and I keep them in a pile, and every now and again I'll have a quick look through them. So my interest really starts in tractors of this era. This is the white David Brown range. This is when they first came out as the Selector-matics. As the brochure says, years ahead in looks and performance. So we've got the 770, the 880 and the 990. If we have a flick through the brochures, we've got loads of colour pictures, stuff like this, which is a general cutaway view of a 990. So a section 990 showing all the vital parts cut away. It's strange, isn't it? You wouldn't happen to see these in brochures today, would you? So we've got the gearbox there, the hydraulic system, the PTO coming to the front. We've got the engine. They've also included a cutaway of the 3-cylinder engine that they used in the 770 and the 880. Later on, these three little tractors were joined by their big brother, which was this one, the David Brown 1200. Originally, as the brochure says, 67 horsepower. It was then later upgraded to a 72 horsepower. This was the frontline tractor of my father for many years. This done a little bit of everything. So it was ploughing, forage harvesting, snow ploughing, hedge cutting, and anything else that my father used to get up to as an agriculture contractor. We've got some general pictures of these working away. So there's the Monster 1200 there, ploughing with what I think is a semi-mounted 6-furrow plough. We've got a general countryside picture, something I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. So the 880 with a loader and a bale slave loading little bales onto what I think is the 990, which is towing a week's flatbed trailer. Of course, before you stack them rather, you've got to bale them, and there in the field is an 880 with, I think that's a Victor cab, what was known as a Victor cab, baling away there with the yellow Bamford's baler. And just to show how versatile they were always very good with the PTO stuff. There is the 880 on a rotavator. Looking through brochures like this, you'd never think it now, but back then they were really pushing things like the Super Comfort suspension seat, which, yeah, let's be honest, no farm lad would look at that these days, would they? But back then that was the height of luxury. And that deserved a whole page all to itself, just to prove how luxuriously comfortable things like these were back in the 60s. And then as the 70s came in, the decals changed, the styling changed, the big cab arrived. So a lot of people aren't very keen on this cab, me included. The decals changed from what we remember as these, the long black decal along the side of the bonnet. They changed and they included the bottle opener DB logo. The designation of the tractors changed. This is when the 1212 Hydroshift very first started and it came out. One of the brochures that I've got here is obviously back in the day, David Brown also made plows, and here is a black and white picture of a 990 pulling a David Brown 4-furrow plough. This is something I want to recreate, and I will be recreating hopefully next year. So as you probably know, I have a 990 and I have 1.5 David Brown ploughs, 4 furrows. Over this winter, I'll be making 1 out of 2. And with a bit of luck, next spring, we can recreate this picture. I'm sure there will be a video about that. So in the 1970s, David Brown became David Brown Case. The Case name arrived on the bonnet, and the chassis changed colour from chocolate brown to power red. Much of the other stuff remained the same, although there was the introduction of the bigger 1400 range, this one having Hydroshift and the 1410 being synchromesh. Looking at the brochures of the day, and there are two things that are very evident. They are pushing the four-wheel drive, so we've got a 996 there with the four-wheel drive axle, as we have a 1210 here doing a bit of ploughing with what appears to be a Ransom reversible plough. And what else they were pushing was the selection of cabs that were available. So you could still get cabs or cabless tractors, so like this 990 without a cab. We then went on to the weather frame cab, which was there as a safety cab more than anything, so it was a ROPS type of cab. There was no soundproofing at all of any real value in that. Here is a 1412 with the same cab. These coffin doors, as they are known, they were never a popular cab. It's a bit of a pain in the bum of a thing to get in and out of. You could obviously, if you didn't want it with a cab, you could have just the frame, which would afford you the ROPS protection, but it wouldn't keep you dry in the weather. What then came on was the quiet cab. So this is the Mark II quiet cab, the VQ cab. So this was now soundproofed, and it gave you a little bit more protection from noise, as well as generally from the elements. David Brown were keen to push how luxurious their new cab was. So David Brown Q cab owners will be very familiar with this. We've got the Grammer armchair, high, medium, low gears, the main gear lever, the dash with the steering wheel, the dials and the like, obviously clutch and brake pedal. The hydraulic controls and stuff are down the side. The handbrake is here. Not a bad cab, but nowhere near industry leading in its day. They then went on to offer this cab. So this was the Secura, I believe it was the Secura S74 cab. So this would have been the flagship of the David Brown range in the day, the 1412, fitted with the high-spec deluxe Secura cab. Of course, you could still have, as we show here, a 1410 four-wheel drive version with the Kramer four-wheel drive axle. There is the VQ cab. This probably was a better cab than it. This was up there with the best cabs of the day. These were also fitted to John Deere and I think to Marshall tractors. I'm sure people who know their tractors will tell me more. Of course, they were still, in conjunction with those clever cabs, still advertising the open platform tractors. So we've got loads of colour photos, a very good time for brochures generally would have been the 70s and the 80s. Loads of good action shots of stuff going on, tractors ploughing. We've got a lovely winter scene there with a little 885 on a dairy farm as the milk tanker is loading up in the snowy conditions. And a real interesting read. One of the rarer brochures I have is this. So this is the 500,000th Silver Jubilee David Brown tractor. So they built 500,000 David Brown tractors. This was number 500,000, and it was sold at the Smithfield show in Earl's Court all the way back then in 1977, and I believe it made £16,000. I think this tractor is back with its original owner now and is being restored or has been restored. So these brochures were made as a one-off just to advertise the tractor in the Smithfield show. My father remembers watching this being sold. £16,000 was a fair chunk of money for that back then for this tractor here, when I think you could have bought them for about £8,000 or £9,000 back in the day. So it was a fair chunk of money back then. So as you probably guessed by now, I've got tons of David Brown brochures, but what I don't want to do, like the advert from the Farmers Weekly back in the day tells you, is that David Brown white tractor owners never stop talking about them. What I really don't want to do is to bore you with all this stuff. So what I'm going to do is call it a day there. I'm going to put this on YouTube and we'll see how interested you folks are. I'm still trying to find my feet on this whole YouTube thing. If this video that you're watching now takes off and it's flying along, then by all means, I'll do a part 2 to this. If it's not, we'll think about something else to do. Right then, on that note, thanks very much for watching and we'll have another talk soon. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.